Hey everybody, and welcome along to the Aries After Hours podcast. I'm Robert Roy, owner of Aries, along with my co-host and heterosexual life mate, Justin Miller, owner of High Risk Rescue. This is where we step out of the classroom, have a couple drinks to unwind, and talk about, well, pretty much whatever the hell we want to. Sometimes informative, sometimes educational, hopefully always entertaining. So grab a drink or a snack, have a seat, and let's decompress. Okay, going a little bit off script here before we even get started. When we recorded this podcast, we had an issue with our internet connection, and so the conversation between us and Miss Miller got a little choppy in certain parts. It wasn't too big of a deal, so we're going to go ahead and keep it like it is. But just a heads up, you'll find that the audio quality kind of comes and goes a little bit as we are having our podcast. So thanks, and without further ado, let's get on with the show. All right, so I was teaching this refresher class today, and we go over airway first, and the whole thing is scenario driven. It's hilarious because it's a car versus tree. One hits the steering wheel is a scenario, no airbag deployment or whatever. And this one firefighter has been an EMT since the dawn of time, and his answer is more oxygen. She can't breathe. She says she's coughing and having a hard time breathing. More oxygen. So you already got her at 15 liters. Mm-hmm. More oxygen. he was sure as shit that was the answer.
Wow.
So. But anyway, all right, so we're going to be going over the third pillar tonight. We covered in the past, we covered the social pillar, which was how to get out and socialize, don't isolate yourself, that kind of thing. We talked about how you could do that even if you're an introvert, for example. And then we also talked about the physical pillar, how to stay active when stress has started climbing up. Like I said, and that's usually the first thing to go for me, even now. I think it's been about a week since I worked out. I finally got back in the gym. Now I'm already falling off of it again. But tonight we're going to be going over the mental pillar. This is the pillar where we basically, in the military, we talk about learning new skills, doing things to kind of stretch your mind a little bit, and just try to keep learning, keep thinking. Don't let yourself get lost in your thoughts, which leads into other issues that we deal with. And with that, we have a special guest tonight. We have Ms. Bonnie Miller, who is going to be talking with us tonight. And she is trained on a whole other level beyond what we've got. She's the PTSD, background in psychology and everything. And, I would just mess it up. So, ma'am, if you would, go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself, what your background is and what you tend to see in this kind of realm.
Well, thank you. Yes, I'm a clinical hypnotherapist. So I see a lot of different varieties of trauma and stressors and how it affects the body, the mind, the spirit in every way. So I have been and director of clinical hypnotherapy for Methodist Health System Foundation and for about 16 years. And I'm semi-retired now, but I am still practicing. The one thing about what you're talking about, the pillars of resiliency is so important to learn ahead of time, but we oftentimes don't even think about it until after the trauma has occurred or after the stressor. So we don't have tools to prepare. And maybe I'd like to share some of those tools with you tonight so that you can at least recoup or reevaluate how you respond to stressors as opposed to reacting to them.
Absolutely.
Does that sound like something that you would be interested in?
Absolutely. Yeah, like I was saying, the pillars they teach us, and this is an interesting pillar because in the military, they actually kind of combine a bunch of different things to make this one. We talk about learning a new skill, but there's more to it than that. That's just what they throw at us because it's easy to get access to education, especially in the military when you're still in. A lot of these college classes that you can take, they pay for it. So it's easy for us to say that, oh, just do this and that's great. And it's proactive to an extent, but not really, especially once, like you said, once a trauma happens, how do you maintain it? And how do you keep it going? Because then you get distracted. Then it gets hard to remember what you're learning. Or what if you're not in the military? What if access to college classes is not that simple? So yes, I think that'd be a great thing to go over tonight is different things that you know of, different things that you can bring up. that may help out. So we, let's see, we'll start with like learning a new skill. And one of the things that I was thinking about with this was a new skill that you could do, not even so much as like a side job, but more or less just something that you can do that would be productive. So for an example, making pottery. I wrote that down earlier as a possible option. You know, if you, or getting into painting, some kind of art, something that you are creating a new art form, or just something in front of you, like with the pottery thing, for example. You know, you're figuring out how the machine works. You're figuring out how to manipulate the clay.
And generally something that your body's not used to, or your brain's not used to having to deal with that complex issue or something like that. So something different, maybe that you wanted to try for a while, or something you want to do for a while. And, you know, it doesn't have to be necessarily out of the realm of your enjoyment or anything like that, but just something that you'd like to try again, you know, drawing, painting, you know, whatever it might be.
Yeah, and it could be something in art form. Like I said, I was always big on music growing up. So learning a new instrument was big, right? I went through band when I was in high school. So I played brass instruments, and then once I figured out my instrument, I was like, oh, why stop there? So I learned the baritone, and I learned the tuba, and the trumpet, and all these different things. And you know, this is something that a lot of people do, like you were saying, you know, we don't even think about it. We just do it. We're always in some way, we're picking up something new. But how do you do that with a purpose? How do you continue to do that when life starts kicking you while you're down? That's a little bit harder to do. You know, what's easy? Are you really learning something new, or are you just learning how to apply something you've already learned? And does that still do the same thing? So what about you? Like when did you start, for example, doing the crafts, the home improvement things that you've been doing? Because
well, you're talking to the boss, man. You know what I mean? Like for real. Like, I mean, that was, you know, at a young age, just, you know, that was mom's side gig, you know, was doing that sort of stuff. And so we went all around the Southeast doing craft shows and all this other stuff. And,
oh, wow.
you know, I mean, I didn't have any interest in really doing what she was doing, but I was always out there with her helping out and everything else. And it was kind of a family affair. And we, you know, we had little things that we helped out doing, you know, so, of course, we're an industrialist bunch anyway. I mean, we fix our own stuff most of the time and work on our own things unless we just don't feel like it, you know. But especially back then, we did a lot of home improvement stuff and automotive repair and all that sort of thing. And so, you know, cutting wood, painting wood, things like that, that was second nature, you know, before I was 10, 12 years old, you know. So we could, you know, I know she got a big chop saw, you know, there one Christmas, I think it was. And, you know, so we were, you know, mass producing all sorts of different things. And so, yeah, that's, you know, and again, and those things are cathartic to this day, you know, just some of these little side projects and stuff, and just having that skill to be able to bring that out and say, you know, put some things together and work on some stuff and all that. So
yeah, it's the stuff you put together just around the house here has been pretty awesome. Like your outdoor bar, this that I'm propped up against right now, this desk. I really wish that I had taken a before and after photo of that war chest that you got downstairs, because seeing where it started when you pulled it out of the back shed versus where it's at right now was a completely different chest.
Right.
You know, when I was, as far as that kind of stuff goes, my dad, you know, he was warehouse worker in sales. He didn't do a whole lot of home repair stuff or anything. That's where my mom was the one that was into the crafts and things like that, but she was more into things of like a sewing nature. So I learned how to sew, but I had to teach myself, which kind of goes in line with tonight's podcast. I had to kind of teach myself how to do woodworking, how to do wood burning, those sort of things that I got into as a teenager. Learned a lot through ag, but that was obviously a little bit more on the carpentry side, like structures kind of thing. But no, I mean, I enjoyed it, and that has helped me to this day to find something new. I find that I have more confidence to learn something new. I'm not afraid to pick up a welding machine or something and try doing something different. So those have always been nice, and there's a lot of different things that people can do. So another option that we've run into, or that I've seen a lot, is learning a new language. And this one actually came up recently because I was actually at my base, and one of the things that our trainee manager offered up to me. I was talking to her about going to senior NCO academy so I could finally put on my next stripe. And she's like, well, while we're here, what do you think about learning a new language? I'm like, well, sure. And she gave me free access to Rosetta Stone, just like that, you know. Right. And if I get that in the reserves, then anybody listening to this is in the military, in the guard, or the active duty or whatever, you all have access to this too. There's nothing really special to the Air Force that gives us this that other branches don't have. You may not know about it, you may have to ask about it, but they can get it too.
Yeah.
And that's a really awesome thing. So there's a couple things out there. We got Rosetta Stone, which, you know, I played with that back a while when it first came out. But another one that I've used a lot more is Duolingo. That one's really nice. You put it on your phone, you learn language, and they made it recently where you even get to listen to podcasts. Like I was brushing up on my Spanish not long ago. Wow. And one of the things that they did was you could actually listen to podcasts, and they would tell you like this podcast is actually in Portuguese, not regular Spanish. So you'll catch 70% of the language, right? But, you know, listen for words like this, or listen to how they pronounce this. And it really helps you with the dialects. I mean, that goes a long way because for a long time now, I've been able to read in Spanish, but I can't speak it. I can't keep up with the pace of the language, but I can read it fine. So that's something else that's out there that's easy to learn. Other things, you've got mysteries. There's even movies. If you're just a movie buff, like movies like Inception, movies where the credits start rolling and you're like, wait a minute, what just happened? Yeah. Those are good mind benders. Those are good things to kind of stretch your brain a little bit. What are some things you've seen lately?
I mean, you know, so we last time we talked about sports and all sorts of different things. You know, a lot of different ways that you can try to de-stress. So we were talking about working out and all those different types of things. But sometimes, you know, when we start talking about this mental pillar and this mental wellness and mindfulness, and Mom's going to get into a lot of that. And for those of you haven't caught on yet, you know, our guest is actually my mother, and so we've had plenty of discussions. We've taken a couple classes together on different things, and so you know, we've bounced some things off each other before, but this is definitely one of those things where, you know, going to work out in the gym and things like that, it's fine, but you know, you're not gonna work out, you're not gonna lift weights, enough weights to heal the mental scars or the mental wounds that you have, you know. And so it takes a little bit more than that. It takes a little bit more internal work, you know, doing that. And so of course, you know, a lot of these physical activities and things like that are great. But, you know, some of the things we're leaning more towards with this one is some of those things that kind of keep your mind working and keep the blood flowing in your mind and in your brain to you know, accelerate its healing, you know. And so if that's something that you're dealing with, if you're just trying to stay resilient, like she was talking about, if it's a little bit before that, if it's before the incident or the issue arises, you know, if you're already kind of, you know, prepared for it, then you're going to be a lot better off when that time comes, that significant event, the traumatic event, whatever might happen. Or it could just be cumulative, right? That's what you see a lot in EMS, where we get a lot of cumulative stress. And in military, law enforcement, all the public safety realms have a sure enough cumulative stress, you know, load. And like I said, she's going to talk a lot more about this, but it will absolutely weigh on you over time. And so the better and the more resilient you are before all that starts, you know, you're just going to deal with it so much better.
One of the other things that we were talking about earlier, not us, I was talking about it with somebody else when I was doing that refresher earlier, was that sometimes just learning more about your own career helps a lot. Like, for example, you know, if you're an EMT basic, all right, and you're stressed because of some bad calls you ran or some things you've seen, sometimes just more knowledge helps dispel some of that stress, right? You're like, well, I did this and I don't really know what was going on, and what I knew to fix the patient couldn't do it, and then now I got to, you know, God forbid the patient may have passed away or something like that, and you're carrying the weight of that. Sometimes just learning more about your career, learning more about what you do, taking it as an EMT, maybe go be an advanced EMT, take the school to be an advanced or a paramedic. If you're already a paramedic, consider maybe nursing or med school, anything, because when you learn more, that knowledge helps cut down the fear, because that unknown aspect isn't there anymore, or at least not as big as it was before. A paramedic knows a lot more than an EMT, a doctor knows a lot more than a paramedic. So when the paramedic is sitting there like, I did everything I knew to do and it wasn't enough, and that's weighing on me, you can reappropriate that. You can have it where you take that, you use that as a driver to go and learn more. And you don't have to go to med school and be a doctor, but you can just take the class, take a course, learn from another doctor, mentor somebody. It doesn't cost you a penny to do that. And then now you have a better understanding of the human body. You have a better understanding of that pathophysiology and the things that are going on. And that can really help. And if you're, stepping that back directly to EMS, if you are an EMT, your stresses are probably not just what you're seeing in the field. Your stresses are also the fact you're only making $14, $15 an hour. And then so you're questioning, am I really getting paid enough for this? Well, if you get the gold patch, you're still not going to be rich if you're going to make a little bit more. So you're progressing other things. Doing something in this sense will actually fix other things indirectly that may be impacting you, and you don't really realize it because it's not front and center on your stresses right now. And this is probably a great segue to lead into our guest here, but PTSD is not really caused by one big event, right? If you think about it, I'm not an expert on this.
Unless it is. Sometimes it is.
Sometimes
it can't happen, but it's few and far between. Yeah.
A lot of times it's the little things. A way that I've explained it before when I had to seek mental health myself was that one of the biggest reasons why I was so stressed was because I realized that there was no one easy fix. I couldn't just say that problem. If I fix that one problem, I'll be okay. No, that one problem, as big as it was just a needle in the haystack. I could fix that one and 1,000 others just like it, and I would still have that ton of pine needles sitting on me. And it was like I could fix a problem a day, a problem an hour for the next 20 years and still be struggling with this. So there's other things, there's other ways to combat that, other things that we can do. And Ms. Miller, like what are some things, because we were talking about, you said you had some tools and some things that could help people when the stress really starts to pile up. What are some things that people can do kind of just on their own?
Well, it's to change the perspective. You have to change your mind. You have to change what your thoughts are. And doing what you were saying earlier is changing your activities and learning something new are all great strategies. However, you have to get your mind engaged first in order to even have the desire to do something else. Before long, you become paralyzed in that mindset of I can't, or why bother, or it's too much trouble, or I'm not worth it, or whatever the rhetoric that goes on in your head. The self-talk that's going on has to be addressed in order for you to want to learn a new language, or want to get better at whatever, or be a better parent, or be whatever different than you are now. So think about how that's what I do, is help people change their perspective, is getting out of that mindset just long enough that they could see more options of the way you think, the way you behave. So I can tell you a list of things that you could do. You could breathe, you could take yoga, you could be mindful, but yet you have to learn how to be mindful. You have to learn yoga, those kinds of things. But one thing you can begin doing is just getting really centered with yourself. And that's often uncomfortable for many people because they don't really know who they are. They don't really recognize, or they struggle with their identity. And they will then find a way to say, why bother? It's not worth it, and whatever. And they don't get out of it because their mind's still in that loop. So changing the loop is learning how to communicate more effectively with your own mind initially, and then repeat that regularly. And that's the strategy that I use for most to begin with. It's just getting a hold of the control over your own mind, thinking that you can change your thoughts, like I'm going to look to the right or I'm going to look to the left. You make a decision. You can't have two opposing thoughts at the same time. So you're going to pick going to the right or going to the left, or maybe you'll just look in the middle. But you have power in that choice. And more often than not, people who are stressing, feeling powerless, feeling they have no control, feeling they can't get out and do. So getting control of one thought at a time is oftentimes the baby steps that have to take until you start leaping. And it doesn't take long, but to teach your mind how to think differently when you're encouraging yourself. But if you don't know you can do that, you still continue to do it. So if everybody would find a way to just focus on one thing, even if it's a pen or your shoe or the wall or something that is in your vicinity, and just look at it and find something pretty about it, or find something enjoyable about it, or a memory that's attached to it. You're changing your mind from one state to another state. I see right now, I'm looking across my office and I see a hat. I like the hat. The hat's green. I love that little hat. I think it's just adorable. Now, I don't necessarily wear hats, but that makes me smile. So if you start changing the state of your mind in the things that you think about, you're building one thought next to the other and say, hey, I might try that. Or more optimism is built in to feeling good, even if it's one thought at a time. Does that make sense to you?
It does, absolutely. Because I was telling Justin in a previous episode, my favorite pillar of all the things that we did, is why I chose to do it first, is the physical pillar. I love working out, or at least normally I do. But when things get tough, it's the first thing to go. I mean, I will continue to learn a new language. I'll continue to build my company. I'll continue to do all the stuff. But the first thing that I stop is going to the gym. And that's weird to me because I really enjoy it. I've enjoyed my progress. I even enjoy the workouts themselves, unless I'm running. Then I just don't enjoy anything about that. But, and I think that what you said sheds a lot of light on why that is because when I'm stressed, it's not so much that I don't like to work out, it's that I'm just not in the right mindset for it. And then so that doesn't happen. I wound up, the whole day goes by, and before I know it, it's too late to go to the gym. It's almost 9 o'clock and I got to go to sleep. So, no workout. And then the next day is the same. And the next day is the same. And before I know it, I've been out of the gym for so long that I know going back is going to mean being sore all over again. And I don't have time for that. So now I don't go back and it's
You call it self-sabotage,
So all right, so let's talk about that for a second with the self-sabotage. Are there any other things that we can do to kind of stop that? I know you mentioned like find something in the room that you like, even if you're sitting on the couch, something to give yourself a happier thought. And I can see how that would help pull you out of the situation that's going on. But is there a way to stop yourself from getting stuck on the couch in the first place, for example?
Well, you're going to end up on the couch sooner or later. I mean, that's why you have a couch. So notice the things that are in the room, just if you have a thought that crosses your mind, like, hey, I really should go to the gym. Oh, and then you give yourself a litany of excuses, then you're setting yourself up. Instead of saying, I can go to the gym for 30 minutes. I'm worth that. You're giving yourself the positive direction so that your mind will give you more of that, more creative thinking about how you can manage to fit that in, and how you'll feel much better when you come out of that with the mindset to handle the other stressors that you have in your life. But by giving up the one thing is a de-stressor, you're giving permission to be stressed.
Makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. Yeah, because one of the things the whole point of the pillars is to try not to go down that road, but the minute you let them go, there you are. What
Right.
is
How do you get it back? Is you make a different choice. Like I said, you cannot make two opposing thoughts simultaneously. You can't say it's bad and good at the same time. It's this is a good idea or this is a bad idea. You have to decide which one you're going to choose, and that's the one that your mind will produce. So once you negate one, you accept the response. You accept the consequences of the other. So if you want to get out of that, if you want to use a tool to get out of that, you change your mind and then continue to change your mind. So you're changing every thought as you're thinking it. Well, that's different. That's hard for many people to do when they starting out. Oh, well, I keep thinking about it over and over again. Well, have something else pleasant in mind that you know is positive, that you know that is what you would like, or that how you want to feel, or want to feel productive and accessible or congenial or funny. If I want to be outgoing and I'm sitting on the couch and I haven't spoke to anybody in 3 days, then you have to think outside of that thought, outside of the couch. You have to start to get off of the couch. You have to get your mind engaged in something, but it has to be self-driven, but it has to be baby steps. You bite off more than you can chew, and then you're back on the couch going, you see, I couldn't do all that. That's the self-sabotage we do. Hey, I can do this. If I can do this, I can do that. And baby steps helps you build that mental muscle that creates confidence in the next thing you'd think of. And you prime in the pump of all the positive thoughts that you have already built in. It's just a matter of getting to them. You just have a lot of them coming at you with stressors that create pushback. The pushback is, I really don't want to do that, or I'm afraid to do that, or there's bad consequences. I heard about that and I can't do this. But that all that self-dialogue is creating the motivation to sit on the couch. So, what I said before is like the same thing. I repeat this so often. It is, you have to start with one thought at a time, and one positive thought, and add another positive thought, and you prime the pump, and more positive thoughts come out of your head. And what I tell people to say is, when you have a positive thought come up and you wasn't really thinking about it, it's your mind giving you a positive thought that you hadn't thought about. But it's trying to continue the thought process that you started. So if you start a positive thought, now I like that hat, but now I see that picture over there. I really like that picture, and it's got a horse in it, and I like horses. And the thoughts keep, as I look around the room, I fill the room with things that I like. And so that's why you have stuff on your walls, because you surround yourself with things you like, but then you ignore them and you don't even know what it is anymore. Becoming more present.
there's a term that I've heard growing up, and I never really understood it until I got to be an adult, and it's perfect for what we're talking about, is being your own worst enemy. Like you're saying, you kind of, your self-sabotage and stuff like that, you are your own worst enemy. You're talking yourself out of things, and biting off more than you can chew really happens a lot, going kind of back to that physical pillar, because people will get in the gym and they're like, I can do this, and I'll spend 3 hours moving all this weight, and then now they're crippled for the next week and a half because they really just overdid it, as opposed to taking it a little bit at a time. Like you said, 30 minutes, wean yourself back into it. I tell you what, at 39, the soreness that I felt the last time I got into the gym, I swear to God, if I ever stop working out again, I'm just going to be done. Because the pain, holy crap, it hurt to stand up, let alone try to do a workout. So I can say that I felt that one in my bones. But
it hurts when you pay the consequences for your actions, but when you decide, you pay the consequence. And that's how it is. When you make the choice, the consequences. What really comes into play is when other people make choices. And in the military, Or at a job, in a job, other people make the decisions and you pay the consequences. And that's when a lot of that powerlessness comes into play. And, we take it all very personally. And so you think about how that might affect the mental status of somebody who feels powerless a good bit of the time in your position as a not being able to help everybody that you want to help, or not being able to do what you need to do in your position, that because the military decides what you do and where you go and how you do it. So many other voices that have to take responsibility for your actions, but you have to act. So now I can decide what I want to think, but when you're in a position where other people have to decide how you behave, then that's another whole facet of that. But you still think the way you think. They can make you do stuff you don't want to do, but you still get to think about how you will respond and feel okay with you. That's getting in your own head again. And I say that because that's what I do. Help people get in their own head and communicate more effectively. And even if it's just take 10 deep breaths, you're focusing on you and the breath that's coming in and out of your body. That's an action. That's an activity that you can do anywhere, anytime, any place, and you're still breathing. But if you add a color to that breath and say, well, what is the color of calm today? Just imagine, what is your favorite color, or what is the color that for you represents calm or peace or love or joy. Think of whatever that color might be. It might be pink, or it might be yellow. Well, think of that color and just breathe that color in and out. Now you changed your thought to whatever else powerless was going on. Now you're in control of color and what's going, and the peace that's going on in and out of your mouth, in and out of your nose, and then you're settling down into a different mindset just because you took control of you. Not that you could control the situation, but you could control you. And that is another baby step into the feeling that even though I'm in this position, doesn't mean I have to identify myself with it. I can move through it without attaching or assigning myself responsibility for their actions.
That actually kind of answers one of the questions I was going to ask you. If you run across, let's say, I don't know if you've had a patient that was like this, where they come and talk to you and everything, and their issue is that they're afraid of losing the things that they love. It could be from anything, any life change where loss is involved, or the threat of a loss. And so, we've talked about finding the things that you love in the room, or finding the things that you love around you and everything. What have you ever come across a patient, or you don't have to go into the patient specifics, but or a situation where it wasn't that they couldn't find something that they loved, it was that they were terrified of losing or having taken from them the things that they love. I don't know if that's something that.
Sure, it's everyone. Everyone has that fear. They don't want to lose their loved ones, and they don't want to lose the things that they worked hard to earn or provide. That fear is instinct for survival. That survival instinct that's in all of us, that wants to protect our environment, or ourselves, or our loved ones, or our community, or our world. Everybody has, they cast a broad net about who and what their personal preference is, but everyone has that instinct for survival and the protective mechanism that goes into place. It's, everybody interprets that a little different, but we all have it. So how we interpret it will be different for each person, and given their experience. And if they have had things taken from them without their permission, or betrayed, or anything of that nature, then of course they have a precedent already established in their mind that that could happen. And when you're blindsided and things are taken without warning, with no warning, and you're blindsided, that generally leaves a little pocket of anxiety, but it could be just like a little pocket of survival instinct that comes out, and the defense mechanism comes out, and you want to defend that, whether it's being taken or not. You have a tendency to want to defend it against the invisible threat, not even the reality threat. Your unconscious mind doesn't know the difference between the reality of it and the imagining of it. So that's why getting in your mind and creating positive things helps to create a perspective when you're up against negative things. We're bombarded with negative things, and we don't take advantage of the positive things as often, but we feed, and our society feeds us nonstop negative impressions. So, that part of the threat of something happening to your family, or someone betraying you or taking advantage of you, that tends to be part of the society's norm, unfortunately. But really, preparing yourself by creating an environment of doing all you can do, and you prepared for, not that we're boarding up the windows, protecting it, but setting things in place where you're doing the best you know how to do at the time. And that's where faith enters in. And I know you have a spirituality pillar, but mental and spiritual kind of blend well together. So because you can think of your higher self or your higher power in that belief system, or changing that mindset from negative to positive, doesn't mean that you're condemning anyone, but you're just recognizing the best in everyone instead of looking for the threat. And that constant looking for the threat will only help you find more threat, because your mind works that way. It'll find the most dominant thought. It'll follow the most dominant thought.
Kind of going back, Mom, to kind of bring it to our listeners and stuff about some of the things that that they can do. We were talking about precursor type stuff. So we have people who maybe either new or just haven't gotten into very much in their career. They haven't really had to deal with a lot of excessive stress or anything like that. What are some of the things they can do to prepare themselves mentally, for the types of jobs that we deal with, EMS, law enforcement, fire service, military, those things where they may, go off to a combat zone, though they may go see some, very bad things that affect them, and so what are some of the ways that they can help to build that resiliency before those things occur?
Well, by all means, create a plan, by all means, create a plan, and know that stuff's going to happen. You're going to see stuff, but if you're not proactive in creating your safe space in your own head, then no place will be safe. When you're, in a compromising situation, you have your mind to go to for solace and comfort and connection. But when you don't have any prerequisite, like you said, for that, you have to create a safe zone in your own head, or a confident zone, or, hey, I'm capable of this. And that's, talking to somebody, of course, but talking to others that are in your same space. Say, this is my fear, or this is what I'm thinking that might happen. Or even if you don't know it's going to happen and you're just new, but gosh, you have to be expecting something. Now there's, we all want to think that, oh, that'll never happen to me, but certainly when you're in the military or emergency man of any kind, fire, police, EMTs, all of these areas are surrounded in tragedy. There's also beauty in a lot of those situations as well, but we tend to focus only on the trauma things that are happening. Because babies are born and children are saved and things, positive things are happening every day, but we tend to focus only on the negative. So creating a plan of, this is where I'd like to go. This is how I'd like to feel. This is what I want to feel in control and confident, and knowing that this is a part of life that is happening before me that I have no control over. I'm moving into a situation that I have no control over, past my job description. I have no control over how the car spins around or how the fire got started. I have no control over these things. I just know that my job is going to help to resolve that and keep that mindset that you're doing the best you know how to do under these, tumultuous circumstances that you may walk into without knowing, but not being blindsided by it when oh, wow, I didn't see this hit the fan and didn't think that would happen. And sure enough, it does. But with no plan, you're bound to hit the fan. With a plan of just taking the time to decide, I want to fill my mind with these thoughts. It might be just a simple, and I use the word meditation, but it's not really even a meditation. It's just you could call it a prayer. You could call it a mantra, but some positive statements that resonate with you that make sense. I am safe. I am strong. I am confident. I know what I know. I'm doing my best. Those kinds of things to help take care of yourself keeps you hopeful that you won't step in it when it's happening around you, and you're not stepping in it, sinking further into what's happening around you, staying outside of it enough that you can be of service and not part of the problem.
It's interesting you were mentioning that. It's easy for us to lose sight of the beauty in our job. For example, you mentioned children being born. Childbirth is one of the, I don't know how I really have to say. I'm going to say the dirtiest things that we will deal with, because it's there's fluids everywhere. There's all this other stuff, and so
guaranteed messiness.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. There's a reason why it looks like you're dressed for a hazmat scene when you're getting ready to deliver a baby in the back of an ambulance. But that we lose sight of the fact that that's not an emergency. Nobody is dying, hopefully, in these cases. We're on the other end of the spectrum. This is one of those calls where it's like we're helping with something good, because it's messy. Yeah, and it's awkward. It's awkward to teach it in class. It's awkward to be on those scenes, but that mindset makes a complete difference. You're giving birth. All right, cool. You're bringing a new life into the world. That is one of the most amazing and epic things anybody could ever do. All right. Somebody giving birth in the back of the ambulance. Holy crap, there's a mess. That's what I'm focusing on. So your mindset plays for you with this exact same thing and see it in two completely different ways. So that is a big thing.
And so I know so just for everybody listening, there is a lot historically that's, we've come a long way in how we look at this in every aspect of public safety and the military as well. Having come up over the last 20 plus years in both, I can tell you that it was almost nothing, and it was, I think they were started to do it early on. It didn't have the same, it definitely didn't have the same aura around it, didn't have the same feel to it. They definitely didn't call it, what it is now. But it was more like, we're going to do a debrief or something, a hot wash or something like that. And those things really were your, hey, let's get this out on the table. Let's talk about what went wrong on the call, quote unquote, right? It wasn't, what's wrong with John? What's wrong with Billy? you know,
Right.
and so those things started to come out, and sometimes it would, the group discussion would happen, and then they would go back to the squad room, the kitchen table, back to the barracks or whatever. And then 4 or 5 or 6, people, they would start to have that conversation, and they go, man, I really screwed up. I should have done this. I should have done that. I can't believe I did this. I caused Johnny to get hurt or whatever. And, that sort of thing is where, any type of growth or change would happen, but, and understanding as well, so, when you have people across the table from you going, man, listen, you did everything you could do, yeah, you probably could have threw that ladder differently, or man, you could have done that traffic stop differently or whatever. But, ultimately you did a good job. You did everything you were supposed to do. And so, you would kind of start to get some of that reassurance back that, hey, you know what, this wasn't as bad as I thought it was, or, I can I have some things I can work with, And so over time, of course, and it really, like a lot of things, comes out of battle. A lot of the medical stuff that we do now comes out of, military medicine. And, there's a ton of different things that, in our society in general that come from wars, unfortunately. But because of that,
that came from World War II.
Yeah. So with the advent of the word, just a phrase, PTSD, the acronym PTSD, and the phrasing of it and that sort of thing. And it started to trickle down, just like when they started coming back and forming battalions and companies, after the Great World War, they would come back and download that information to the American public. And so that really was, that you started to see a paradigm shift in how we in public safety started to treat those people who had been exposed to these types of things. And it wasn't, because across the board, it was, hey man, if you go see the shrink, if you go see the therapist or whatever, and they find out, dude, you're done, man. Dude, you're not going to be an EMT. You're not going to be a firefighter. You're definitely not going to be in the military. You can't have a gun. Like, you're out of here, man. And so that was a big stigma for a long time.
It still exists.
Mm-hmm.
It really does.
Yeah. And so those are definitely, times have definitely come a long way. But like I said, it's, some things still exist, certain places. And, but nonetheless, the conversation is there, right? 10 years ago, 15 years ago, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation, definitely not in depth like this. And so now, talking about precursor stuff and things like that, there's short courses, there's, small classes, there's academy classes, there's, 40-hour classes and things like that, college level courses or whatever on public safety, military, stress management, stress reduction, all that sort of stuff. And it's very commonplace, and it's built into just about every public safety realm there is. And definitely in the military, it's standard practice now. So, and there's professionals, that are dedicated to it, that are, that are on staff for it, and that sort of thing. And that's a really, that's definitely something that's really going to, help people, and has helped, I'm sure has helped, hundreds of thousands of people. But there is, it's one of those things though, you have to take advantage of that, and that's going back to what she was just talking about, and that's one way you can do it, right? Hey, you can go actually take a course on this, learn about it beforehand, and so that you can be better aware of it. We talked about leadership, some of the ways that leadership impacts this as well. And so if you're listening to this and you're a leader of some type, if you're a paramedic on a dual sorted truck or whatever, you got a basic or an advanced or something that rides with you, or you're an FTO for a law enforcement agency, or a military person that has troops underneath you or whatever, get educated. You might be the one that they come to seeking answers. And if you have no resources for them, if you have no idea how to help them, then you're just as much as part of the problem, So, I think, Mom, did you have anything to add to that?
Well, I think you're very, very true. It's very, because people are looking for assistance and fear, the consequences of them saying, hey, I'm not comfortable with that, or I had nightmares over this, not having any resource in that position, in a position of authority, to help them find resources, even if they don't know, because people don't think they need resources until they need resources. So they don't, oh, I'm going to have this person, I'm going to see this person if I ever have a problem. Well, they never do that. You never plan, okay, I'm going to go see this dentist if I ever have a toothache. You don't really think about those kind of preemptive, strategies. It's the mindfulness that that I'm talking about is being more in control of your own mind. That mindfulness, being aware and present of the possibilities and what you will do under those circumstances, is gain control of yourself first, and then you can control the situation. But gathering your own resources yourself, and that, like I said, you could yawn, you could stretch, you could hug yourself, you could stroke your hands, you could tap your foot. There's things that you can do to help put you back into a state of control. And I teach classes, so I understand this is something that everybody needs to learn. I think they should learn it in kindergarten, but that didn't happen yet. But I think that it is a good thing to share with others that are maybe seeing that or beginning that kind of it's a very glamorous job on one regard and messy on the other. So think about, knowing people that are just going into it, to encourage them to seek out mindfulness classes, take advantage of the things that are available to them at the local library or the mental health hospital, not hospital, but facilities, the areas, stress management coalitions, and so forth. They can be very helpful, but don't be quiet about it, because it's everybody's emotional balance, it's stress level and balance is what they're trying to seek. So I really believe that most people need just a little bit of information will go a long way, but a lot more information will help prevent a lot of stress.
Absolutely. And, I think that's, that's something that, like I said, you're starting to see more and more mainstream where, academies and basic trainings and things like that are actually including at least a short block of, hey, this is a thing. This is something that you need to know about. We don't have enough time to tell you, everything you need to know, but there's definitely, this is going to be part of your job, part of your career that you may experience. And so, going forward, you should probably, seek out some of these resources, or either we're going to provide you with some later. And hopefully that they'll do that. So on the other side of that coin, though, we've had some events and people are going, I can't get this out of my head. I can't, I don't know how to deal with this. I'm just, whether they, it's some kind of issue with they feel like it's their fault, or they feel like they did a bad job, or, somebody was hurt or killed. They like I said, they're assigning blame to it, or just images, anything, restlessness. What are some of those things for us that maybe not, that aren't, well, I guess for both sides. So if essentially just some of those things that we can pick out of people that might be experiencing some of these issues that kind of present themselves that we can be on the lookout for. Just some, maybe just a few things that some people have can look into their friends or family or coworkers and say, hey, you know what, I don't think that's right, and some of the ways that they can help them.
Well, that's a good question, because we oftentimes find that people who are traumatized, they quiet about it. They're not real big on talking about it. They don't necessarily want to share because of the guilt or the shame or the fear or the, that was surrounding the trauma. That really, more often than not, that I find that they were responsible, but they take responsibility or assign themselves responsibility and also condemn themselves in the process. So they judge themselves based on the assumption, not the truth. And those are those people that really need to seek somebody out to help them look at it from a different perspective, because their perspective is skewed by the trauma, not necessarily the truth. So they're looking through rose-colored glasses or filtered glasses at something that may or may not have been their fault, or they're contributed to that problem, but and more likely out of their control, but they felt like they could control it. So, those people need to seek assistance with someone who can actually help them see it from a different perspective. And so their family members might encourage them, say, just talk to not necessarily talk to somebody who is doing the same thing they're doing, but somebody who can look at it with fresh eyes, not with somebody who has been through the same thing. It doesn't, I encourage people to talk to people who have gone through the same issues, like you were talking about at the end of the shift and going through it and encouraging one another. This goes beyond that, just getting that trauma out of that instantly. If the trauma is persisting, and they continue to, have flashbacks and stuff as that, they really need to see it from a different perspective, because their mind won't let them see it any other way. And until they see it from another perspective, it more likely takes root and becomes a pattern, or the belief system sticks, becomes a belief system. So that's, I have helped many people do that. And they're shocked that they can get past that. They're shocked because their mind would not let them get past the trauma. They just kept reliving it over and over again until it made it true. It made it true in their mind. And so even though it wasn't, and they got to see it from a different perspective. And that's why I'm saying to try to get them, encourage them to speak to a professional, someone who can look at it from a different perspective and help them to see it from a different perspective. And it's not something that just happens wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, one-time thing. It's a gradual type of thing, because oftentimes it's not something that just happened. It could have been one-time trauma, but when you relive it over and over again, it's like it happens over and over and over again. So it's just compounded the effectiveness of that one trauma and exacerbates the whole issue. That makes sense.
As you reanalyze it, you start to bring out, different pieces and parts of it that have started affecting you differently as well. You may remember it one way early on, and then differently at a different time.
Right. And sometimes compounding it makes it even more traumatic. I mean, you're making it worse and worse and worse. Oh, well, I saw it that way. Well, maybe I didn't. Maybe it was like this. And the more guilt or the more shame or the more fear that was wrapped around, or the powerlessness that was wrapped around it, or whatever the emotion was wrapped around it, is what the unconscious mind is protecting to keep that person from feeling worse. That the trauma is actually the part of the mind that is better than the perceived threat that the unconscious mind perceives it as. That's why it's so important for them to seek a professional that will help them see it from a different perspective. And I'm not making light of the trauma that is seen on a daily basis at the fire department or the police department or in the service. But that happens every day. That collectively can compound just as much. And it's not one thing. And like Rob was saying earlier, it's just cumulative and compounded more and more and more, it becomes ginormous in the effect that it's having on the unconscious mind. It becomes habit, and that becomes the new normal. And then you're living with nonstop threat as your new normal, and that's exhausting.
And it's interesting to me sometimes how much the brain can trick itself into, like once you start that spiral and your concerns become more realistic to you than the actual reality you live in. Like you said, you can make that mountain out of a molehill. Or I'm not, like you said, not making light of it. I'm not saying that somebody's problem is small, but let's say that the actual realistic problem is this big, but you've made it. When you throw your doubts and your fears and your certain misconceptions and like, oh my God, I can't bring this up because my fire chief is going to fire me and all this stuff. And suddenly what was probably not anything that would be too hard to move past, both on a personal and a professional level, suddenly it's the biggest issue you've ever faced. And everybody around you is like, I don't get it.
Oh, it's definitely one of those deals where, the body, so we're talking about to all our medical, practitioners listen, I mean, you can absolutely will yourself to a physical issue, you know what I mean? And so, right. Yeah. You could, cause yourself to pass out. I mean, you can cause long-term effects. Obviously, if you have a lot of this cumulative stress we're talking about, that you're living this stuff every day, and you're wondering why you can't lose weight. You're wondering why you have high blood pressure. You're wondering why you have arteriosclerosis and all these, a lot of that stuff is a lot of the hormones that you're producing because of, the way your mind is working, so there's a ton of that stuff that your body all works together. Everything works together. And whenever something's out of whack, doesn't necessarily have to mean that you have some kind of, crazy enzyme depletion or whatever. It's definitely it definitely happen over time, and then all of a sudden you start to see those physical effects. But
I forget what the actual hormone is. I mean, the word cortisol comes to mind when I think about the stress hormone, but you live in this constant state of high stress, and let's be honest, especially in our field, we all do.
Oh yeah.
We work 24 on 48 off, 48 on 72 off. And you get 3 days to decompress or 2 days to decompress, but do you really?
Oh, when you go from 0 to 60 multiple times a day. Yeah, right. And then you work in the lack of sleep and all that stuff. All those things play a part in that stress, so.
Yeah. And you're constantly that stress hormone keeps your sympathetic nervous system in overdrive. So your blood pressure is always high. Your pulse is always high. Respirations are up. You have a hard time sleeping. You really don't digest your food too well. Now you're burning through your energy reserves. It really is. It's like running an engine without oil in it. After a while, it's gonna break. So.
Well, that's why I say you have to have a plan. You have to have a strategy so that you can prepare during your down times, in between the stressors. You have places where you can build your reserves. You can build your well-being back by using that space between your ears. We ignore it most of the time. We don't even think we can control it. We think it's just running there without our input, but we have a lot of input. And learning more about how the mind works and how it works for you and how it works against you is part and parcel of creating the plan. Use the parts that work for you and re-educate the parts that aren't working for you. And that's what part of that strategy and those plans are, is creating, learning how to do that. And like I said, it's not difficult. It just takes a little bit of practice, because we practice stress every day. We can practice mindfulness and confidence in ourselves and strengthen ourselves just as easily, but we don't do it because we don't know how.
And that was something that, kind of a scenario, just for people to think about and try to simplify it for people. If you have a car, right, or a vehicle, and it breaks down, and you know nothing about how to, change a battery or fix it, or just minor maintenance things or whatever, you have no idea how to troubleshoot any of these things on your vehicle, then, you're stuck on the side of the road, right? I mean, you're not going to be able to do much about it if you have no knowledge, right? You might be able to try to Google some resources, or, phone a friend or whatever, right? And that's fine.
Have the tools.
Yeah, and you might fix that. You might get a fix like that, phoning a friend, talking to somebody, looking up some resources. You might get lucky and be able to do that. That's fine. But more than likely, at the end of the day, you're going to do what?
Go to a mechanic.
You're going to go to a mechanic, and you're going to get that engine really looked at. They're going to take it apart. They're going to pick it apart and get down to the real root of the issue, so that they can, get the parts. They can, may take a little while, but they can work on getting that solution to that issue, and then get you back on the road. Right. And that's no different than what a professional would do for you. Right. One of your most prized possessions in the world, which is your mind, has an issue. Right. It breaks down. And then, you need to have it looked at, and this, again, I'm speaking in generalities here, and it's, just to kind of simplify it for folks, so you don't get so overwhelmed or anything like that with it. It's just that simple. And, I think we talked last time about it being a, mental injuries. So just like we have cuts, we deal with, abrasions and lacerations and things like that on our patients, on our medical patients or trauma patients. It's really no different. You have an injury, but it's on your brain. You know what I mean? It's in your mind. And so the longer you leave it there, the worse it gets. Right. It's going to develop scar tissue. It's going to push some things out of the way. It's going to occlude blood vessels. It's going to, occlude blood flow sometimes, whatever, all these different, could get septic or whatever. All those different things that we have with these traditional type injuries like cuts and abrasions, those are the same things that happen in our mind. And so if we leave it untreated, if we leave it, unmedicated, just sometimes, and I'm not talking about, medicating, these things all the time, but sometimes we just need that break. We need that. I need to get this pain under control, so now I can breathe, get my breathing right, so I can focus and I can calm down and start the healing process. So, that's what happens with a lot of people starting out, as they get medicated, and then they just continue to be medicated. But the medication really, the medication is really just to kind of get you to a point to where you can start to self-treat down the line, or, help work on yourself. Yeah. And so that's a lot of what mom does is acts as more as like a mind coach. And, it really is about helping to lead someone in a direction, so that one day that they can work on these things on their own. So is that about right?
Yeah, it's my practice is all about empowering people, not making them dependent, making them more independent, knowing how to use their own mind for their best interest. And what information went in might have been misinformation or information that they took as true, but was not. And they factored that into their experience and believed it as true. And then the next thing you know, they have more and more problems. So yeah, the whole practice is about learning how to get better at being you, not being anybody else, but the best parts of you. And that's, I think, what everybody's looking for is, just living their best life.
It's just a little hard to figure that out, though. Like, I know, and this is probably more of a personality flaw in my part, for example, but a lot of my adult life, if I had to define myself, I would use my career to do it. I'm a firefighter, I'm an EMT, I'm an instructor, that kind of thing. And you take that away, let's say I get fired or something like that. Now I'm not working for a fire department, or I'm not in the military anymore, or something like that. Sometimes it can be really hard to refine yourself. To find, because we, especially in my age group, we're established in our careers. We've been in them for a while at this point. I've been in the military for 14 years. I've been in the fire service a little bit longer than that, because yours truly, your son here, got me into the military. So, I mean, that's a lot of my self-identity. And in this age group, I know that we base a lot of our self-worth off of our stability. So when that stability gets yanked out from under us, that can be a very critical thing. And that's where these pillars come into play, is you're trying to continue to do the things that not only are good for your brain and good for your resilience, but their stability within themselves, right? If you work out all the time, maintain that, because there's some stability. If you're the type that wants to learn a new language, or you paint, or something like that, there's stability. You can still find it. It just may not be what you've always focused on. And I know that's easier said than done. I'm saying that for my own benefit as much as anybody's, but that's just something that I've come to realize over the years. And it is definitely a lot more easily said than done. But
Well, that's the preparation and the belief that you have in yourself and the confidence that you have in yourself, is saying, even if I am fired from my position, even if I am no longer, they cut out my position or whatever, knowing, and that's faith in that as well, that faith in yourself that says, well, if this is not for me, if I'm being pushed out of this situation, whether it's the universe or your higher power or whatever you want to call it, if not this, then something's better and down the road. So even if that looked ugly at the time, that just was a springboard for something better. I might be the cockeyed optimist here, but that's what I believe, and I teach that as well. So thinking about yourself being the victim because of someone else's actions, you only give your power to that person or that situation. You maintain your personal power, saying your loss. If you don't want me, if that's your loss, I'll be better off somewhere else. And you have to have a belief in yourself to keep that mindset that that's your loss, even however crazy it turned out, or how bizarre the situation might be, or it's still, you find yourself in a better position if you have that mindset that if not you, then I'll be better down the road. I'll be better out of this situation. And just be grateful that you're moving out of that situation, because anybody who would be fired would have to be under some other kind of situation that they have no control over. So you control your mind, you control your responses to that, and be grateful for the opportunity to seek employment. That makes sense?
oh yeah, no, I can tell you probably 3 or 4 times off the top of my head how many times I have fallen up the stairs where
Exactly.
something happens and it sucks at the moment, but by the time the dust settles, I wound up being further ahead because of it. I mean,
Exactly.
I left Poplarville Fire, 11 years ago. I left Poplarville Fire, and that was a hard transition. My entire career in the fire service was at that fire department, and I loved it. And I remember the uncertainty when I moved. I was like, well, what now? I'm basically resetting. And I really wasn't resetting, but that's what it felt like. And when I look back now, 11 years later, that was the point when things really started moving forward. It wasn't the end. That was just, I had to take a step, and I probably never would have done it if things didn't go the way they did. So
exactly. But having faith in yourself is not giving your faith to something that you don't understand. Just because you don't understand why it happened doesn't mean that it wasn't supposed to happen like that. Right. It could have been better. It could have been, they could have done it better. All things could have aside, you wouldn't have left otherwise. And you'd have been not given the opportunities that you have had. So be grateful before you learn the better part of it. Just trust that the better part of it's coming, because You were moved out of that situation so that you can move into a better one. And that's for you. That's for your own personal growth. It doesn't mean that it's in everybody's situation is going to be the same. It's going to be the same situation for how you feel about it. You have to feel differently about it. And that's why your mind has to be in it totally in a positive direction so that you can take advantage of those things when they appear rather than go, damn, why did they do that to me? I don't deserve that. Well, no, you didn't, because you wouldn't get up off your butt and move on yourself. Confidence in yourself. The universe has more confidence in you than you do. Situations like that when you didn't even know you needed to.
So we're moving on an hour here. You have any final thoughts on, or anything that you want our listeners to take away? I mean, again, like I said, people in a lot of different facets of life, somebody just starting out or somebody who mid-career, and even people later in their careers who are, having, different stressors for different problems, but, or for different reasons. Anything that you'd like to impart on them going forward?
Well, just to, use their own ability, wherever they're at in their life and their progression of what they're doing, whatever there's, just start there. Don't wait till you have to go. Don't wait till you start the new position. Don't wait till, you get a raise. Don't wait till whatever happens. Don't wait. Just start now working on you, getting better at being you. Don't wait for it to happen. It's up to you to do that. Nobody can do it for you. So you might as well start. And there's help all around you, and take advantage of the help and support. And you guys have a lot of resources available, and I'm sure you could send them resources. If they don't have any, they could probably contact you somehow and get some, or contact their services in their area, wherever they're from, to find resources for them, even if it's a book or a mindfulness book, or Google it. Mindfulness. There's a delightful book by Martin Seligman, and it's called Using the New Positive Psychology to Realize Your Potential for Lasting Fulfillment. That's a long title, but it's actually Authentic Happiness. So, and it's a good little book. It gives you a lot of insights on how to be happy and how you got yourself in that position to begin with, or unhappiness. But it's too many resources to be stuck. Just start now.
Yeah, and for those that are listening, I'm going to link that book. I'll find it and put it into the summary at the outside the podcast. That way you can see it, you can read the title, purchase the book, that kind of thing. But yeah, no, I thank you, Ms. Miller, for coming out tonight and talking with us and everything. That really enriched this podcast a lot more than it would have been otherwise.
So how can people find you? Your private practice. What do you do in your private practice most often, and how can they find you on social media, or if they, people want to reach out to you for training or for anything like that? I know she does a lot of hypnobirthing and things like that. So for those of you who are pregnant, thinking about getting pregnant, or anything like that, it's one of her specialties. So
I do hypnobirthing, but I probably do a lot more of anxiety. Anxiety tends to be the root of those things. And it's a consequence of stress. So I do a lot of anxiety, and then pain and habits and stress. So, I think that those are the four pillars that I deal with most often for a revamp. But you can just contact me if you have any questions about hypnosis or hypnotherapy. I do self-hypnosis classes, I offer to the public self-hypnosis classes in Harrisburg and in Poplarville, but they are donation only. They're free. So just to learn more about how to get better and how to use your mind a little bit more effectively. And the private practices are it just, like I said, I'm semi-retired, so I only work 2 days a week otherwise. And you can reach me through my email.
We'll put that in there in writing as well, so people that are listening to the podcast can actually just find it, click the link. Probably the easiest way to do it.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, like I said, really appreciate your insight, and as always, it's a pleasure. And again, these are some of the things. These are just scratching the surface and just having the conversation. But there's so many other things out there that we can discuss, and we may do that another time. And but again, definitely go out there and seek some of these resources. Talk to someone. It doesn't have to be somebody with 3 letters after their name or anything like that, or 2 letters after their name. It's it could just be people in your shift, people in your squad, whatever. It doesn't have to be leadership. And just start talking about it. Have the conversation, like she was talking about. Get those resources and have them available to you and yours before something bad happens. That way, you're not scrambling to try to figure out what it is the next. What's the next step.
And keep in mind too, if you're listening to this podcast and if you do happen to be leadership at your department, you are in a very fantastic position to fight that stigma where people are afraid that their leadership may find out that they're struggling with something and then something bad happens. I mean, the buck kind of stops with you. What better way to shoot that down than to be the leader that says, no, that's not the case. We can talk about this. If you don't want to talk to me, that's fine. You can get help in other avenues, but do that and know that you're not going to be penalized for that, right? I mean, that's the whole reason I think that we have that stigma is because that communication is not there. Yes, a long time ago, that might have been the case where it's like, all right, you get something wrong, so you're out, but that's not the world we live in anymore. We have long since left that behind. And I think just a lot of people haven't realized it yet. So, but other than that, like I said, thank you again, man, for coming out tonight. You actually, did I hear right that you're going to be starting your own podcast soon?
Yes, I am. As soon as I get enough of them together, and then I'll start probably by June.
Sounds great.
Do you have a name for it yet?
Mine Matters.
Mine Matters. We'll also, I don't think there's an actual RSS feed for it just yet, but we'll link the name for it in there, and then you guys can be looking for that, and definitely go and follow her and tell your friends about it, and that way we can start getting her some exposure out there.
Absolutely, this will be good for everybody. This is a really big sticking point in our field. Being able to be resilient with everything that we deal with, and so. Don't let what we have in our podcast be all that you get, because this is just barely scratching the surface. Check out Mind Matters. Once she gets it up and running, I mean, the treasure trove of information that's going to be there is going to be phenomenal. I will be listening to it. I'm sure
it's going to be a wide breadth
of
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're looking forward to it. If there's anything we can do to help you get it going, just by all means, let us know. We're going to go ahead and wrap it tonight, and we'll go from there. So we have one more pillar in the next coming episode. It'll be the spiritual pillar, which we did hit on tonight, which is good because, like you said, as we said, these 2 pillars kind of go together. So you really can't talk about one without talking about the other. We're going to finish up this 4-part series in the coming weeks and move on to the next topic. Just so everybody is aware, again, we do still have the Q&A episode that we're putting together. If you have a question for us, for Ms. Miller, or anybody that else is listening, serious questions, joke questions, I really don't care. Put them out there. Let's get some questions. Let's see what we can talk about the next time we have a podcast. So thanks again, everybody, and we will talk to you next time.
Later.